What's up, fiends? Alucard here. Today, I'm ranking the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film series. Alright, so I think most of y'all have at least heard of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There are currently 9 films in the series, and this is my top 9. So let's start off with my least favorite, number 9. So coming in at number 9, I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation from 1995, aka The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is directed by Kim Henkel and stars Renee Zellweger, Matthew McConaughey, Robert Jacks, and with cameos by stars of the original film and a small part from pro wrestling personality Deborah Marshall. This one follows 4 teenagers on prom night that get terrorized by the cannibalistic killer family. This is the most WTF chainsaw movie around. It is unbearably stupid. There's so much screaming that I think they just threw out half of the script and they just started screaming instead. That's what it seems like to me. Nothing makes sense. And they even bring in the Illuminati at one point. Boy, I will say that Leatherface is quite interesting here, though, as he's given a personality that you wouldn't think of. And McConaughey is obviously having a blast doing this part. He's at his most unhinged here. Think like Nicolas Cage level, and that's what you get here. But overall, it's a pretty convoluted mess, and I found it a slog to get through. I do know this one has some fans. I think in part because of the ridiculousness of it all. But let me know what you think. Alright, so coming in at number 8, I have The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning from 2006, directed by Jonathan Liebsman, and stars Jordana Brewster, Deora Baird, Matt Bomer, Arlie Ermey, Lou Temple, and Andrew Bryniarski. This one is the origin story of the family from the 2003 remake. It does keep the tone of the remake well intact, and with many cast members returning for this one. And the gore level is fairly high. However, I just found the whole movie kind of unnecessary. It's the same tired plot of people traveling through and being terrorized. Just this time we got a little bit of backstory tacked on, which we really didn't need. There are no standout performances or characters at all, really. This one does have its fans as well. I'm just not one of them. Doesn't do anything for me. Alright, coming in at number 7, I have Leatherface from 2017, directed by Julian Maury and Alexandre Bustillo. Stars Stephen Dorff, Vanessa Gross, Sam Strike, and Lily Taylor. Now here we have yet another origin story, this time focused primarily on Leatherface himself. So we get Leatherface as a teen boy and his transformation into the Leatherface that we all know. This one is a bit different from the others. It's the most story-driven installment, and I think that throws some people off. I don't hate it like a lot of other people, but I also didn't think it was necessary either. Most of the movie is fairly forgettable, minus a scene or two. I really only recommend it if you really want the backstory of the newer version of Leatherface. Alright, coming in at number 6, I have Texas Chainsaw, aka Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013, directed by John Lusenhop. It stars Alexander Daddario, Dan Yeager, Trey Songz, Bill Moseley, and Gunnar Hansen in a special appearance. This one is about a young woman named Heather, and she discovers that she's adopted. So Heather and her friends travel to her grandmother's house to collect her inheritance. But little do they know that Leatherface still lives in the basement. Okay, I know this is probably everybody's least favorite, and I don't blame you, and I totally get it. Believe me, I get it. It's goofy as hell, but I find it kind of entertaining because of how silly it is. I will argue, though, that this one does have the best eye candy, and I did like Dan Yeager's performance as Leatherface. And I mean, come on, do your thing, because it's hilarious. I don't care what anybody says. I laugh every single time I hear it. So I can't fault it for that. It's stupid. It's dumb. So if you want a mindless Texas Chainsaw movie, this is the one for you. All right, coming in at number 5, I've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2022 Netflix movie. Directed by David Blue Garcia, it stars Sarah Yarkin, Mark Burnham, Alice Creed, and Olin Fueri. Sure, I'm mispronouncing that. My sincere apologies. So this is Old Man Leatherface, Netflix style. It's a set 50 years after the original film. This one follows a group of young entrepreneurs traveling to a remote Texas town to gentrify the area. Along the way, they discover Leatherface and the family. Original survivor Sally Hardesty, now a Texas Ranger, comes to their aid. This one has some genuinely decent moments. The characters are so annoying that it's satisfying when they get bumped off. However, one thing I didn't care for is they made Sally pretty similar to Laurie Strode in the David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy, as she's now real badass and they're totally different from her character. And they do modern the franchise up a bit with this one with all the current technology and whatnot. So, if you want a more current version, here you go. I do love the bus massacre, though. It's pretty great. One of my favorites of the franchise. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's pretty decent. I just wish they'd release a proper home video of this movie, as it is currently only on Netflix. All right, now we're getting down to the good stuff here. Number 4, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. This is the remake. Directed by Marcus Nispel and stars Jessica Biel, Jonathan Tucker, Erica Learshin, Mike Vogel, Eric Balfour, Arlie Ermey, and Andrew Brynarski. In my opinion, this is one of the best remakes in modern horror. This one follows a group of friends on their way to a Leonard Skinner concert after buying marijuana in Mexico. They pick up a traumatized hitchhiker who eventually shoots herself in the van. They go looking for help and get involved with the Hewitt clan. So yep, they even changed the name in this one. This one is probably the best acted out of any in the series, as it does have a stellar cast. It takes the original film and kind of amps it up to 11. Now, while Leatherface is the main draw, we do get some great stuff with the other family members here as well. And I remember seeing this in the theater, and it was a blast. I really, really dig this one. All right, now we move to the top 3. So first up at number 3, we have Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 from 1990. Directed by Jeff Burr and stars Kate Hodge, Ken Foree, Viggo Mortensen, and R.A. Mihailoff. This one is about a couple and a survivalist banding together to fight off the Sawyer clan. Sounds pretty original, doesn't it? This is the last one I needed to see in the franchise. I had seen all of them except for this one. And I was pleasantly surprised. This one did not disappoint. Now, of course, this one was severely cut in the theatrical version. Luckily, the version I have is the uncut version, so that is the only version I've seen, and that's the version that I'm counting here. The performances here are pretty good. Kate Hodge is an excellent final girl, and genre superstar Ken Foree always delivers. We also get a look at a young Viggo Mortensen pre-Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. And he's pretty great here too. Now, English film critic Mark Kermode says it best and calls the film a relentless, sadistic, and worryingly amusing movie which will entertain and offend in equal measure. End quote. It's mean, it's bloody, it's brutal. What more could you ask for? All right, so I had a heck of a time choosing between these two. Either one could be number one. But this is what I went with. So number two, I have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 from 1986, directed by Tobe Hooper. It stars Dennis Hopper, Caroline Williams, Bill Johnson, Bill Moseley, and Jim Sydal. This one follows a radio DJ named Stretch as she gets captured and victimized by Leatherface, Chop Top, and their cannibalistic family. Meanwhile, a former Texas Marshal and the uncle to the Hardesty siblings from the first film, he's hunting them down. So this one goes for more of a dark comedy route than horror, but the horror is definitely there too. While the original didn't have much blood and gore, this one amps it up and really does. Tobe Hooper made this as part of a 3-picture deal with Cannon Films, in which one of the films had to be a Texas Chainsaw sequel. So many believe he made this film to go out of his way to tear down the original film. I disagree. I think he wanted to bring a different feel to the franchise, and now this one is looked at as a clever satire of the 1980s excess. Bill Moseley kills it as Chop Top. It's so fantastic. It's fun, it's wacky, and it's terrifying. There's not many movies that can pull something like that off, but this one does. All right, so that brings us to number one. What do you think it is? It's the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper. It stars Marilyn Burns, Paul A. Partain, Edwin Neal, Jim Sydal, and Gunnar Hansen. What else needs to be said? If you don't know, I guess I'll tell you. The story here is about 5 friends on a road trip through Texas. They pick up an unstable hitchhiker who attacks one of them in their van. They stop for gas where there's no fuel, so they end up exploring a nearby house, and they're greeted by a cannibalistic, murderous family, including the ominous Leatherface. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is widely considered one of the greatest and most controversial horror films of all time. It's the grandfather of slasher films. At the time, it seemed so brutally realistic, as it was shot almost documentary style. Its grittiness and gruesomeness just gets even better over time, in my opinion. And the cool part is, it's not even very bloody. People think it is, but it's really not. So if I were to rate parts 1 and 2, they would both get the Golden Bat Award of 5 bats out of 5 for me. So that was my list. What is your list? I want to know. Or at least tell me your favorites. Leave them down in the comments below so we can discuss. And as a side note, Gunnar Hansen is my favorite Leatherface, but most of the actors and stuntmen that play him are pretty great too. Leatherface is a really great, complicated character. As horror icon Doug Bradley puts it, Doug Bradley, Hellraiser, and this is a quote, Leatherface was something other than just a crazed killer. Observing the character's childlike behavior and submissive demeanor in regards to the orders dictated to him by other members of his family made the character something different than just a madman and more of an obedient child. And I think he's also a bit sympathetic because of this. So like I said, very complicated character. Overall, this is a fantastic series of films despite the continuity issues throughout the entire thing. If you like slashers or movies about crazed killers, give this series a go if you haven't seen it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Until next time, adios, you Bela Lugosi.